Hello, this is Jonathan Cook with NCSI. In this video I will be demonstrating how to integrate Neurons for service management with Ivanti automation. For this demonstration, you will need a running Ivanti automation server, and we'll be using this server to complete each of the following steps in this demo. The first thing we need to do is download the Ivanti Service Manager utility connector from the Ivanti marketplace. The link for the connector can be found in the description below or on the screen here. Once you've opened the Ivanti marketplace, you'll want to click Manual Download. Sign in with your Ivanti community account. Enter your credentials. Click Login. This will take you back to the marketplace page. You'll need to click Manual Download again to download the connector. In addition to the connector, we're going to need the Unpackager tool, which can be found on this same page in the Please Note section. To install the connector, we'll need to run the Unpackager, also known as the Ivanti Marketplace Solution Installer. This will pull up a pretty standard wizard where you can click Next, read the end user license agreement, accept, click Next again, select the connector that we've downloaded. Click Open, Next again, Next again, Next 2 more times. This will bring you to the database information. Here you'll just need to update the password and click Next. If you're using security and logins, you'll need to enter your credentials for Ivanti automation. Then you can click Upgrade. Once that finishes, click Next to close the installer. And we can create a user in Neurons for service management. This user will be used for Ivanti automation calls back to Neurons for service management. In this case, I'll set the team to service desk, provide a login ID, make sure to enable internal auth and set an internal auth password. If you're using out of the box where you don't really have that many internal auth users, this field may be read-only, and you may need to make or disable that business rule to be able to set this password. We'll switch over to roles. I'm going to link the administrator role, as it'll automatically have permission to the runbooks and Ivanti automation transaction tables. With that linked, we'll switch over to the Ivanti automation console to set up some of the service management variables. We'll navigate to Library, then to Variables. We'll create a new category. We'll name it Neurons for Service Management. And if we right-click that, we can say New Variable. We're going to be creating 4 variables that are used by the connector. And the names for these are particular, so you'll want to match case and spelling. And the first one is Ivanti Service Manager password. We need to make sure to change the type to password and enter the password of the Service Manager account we just created. Click OK, and repeat the steps again. This next one is called Ivanti Service Manager Tenant. This is going to be the tenant name. It'll be a type of text. This is generally the host name for your Service Manager tenant. We'll click OK, create the next one. This is going to be the Ivanti Service Manager Tenant URL. This is going to be the URL that you use to access Service Manager. And if you're using on-prem, you'll need to add the /heat. Click OK, and we'll add the last one, which is the Ivanti Service Manager username with a capital N for name. This is the username for the account that we just created. Click OK. Next, we'll create a certificate that Ivanti Automation can use. When we enable the Web API for integrating between Service Manager and automation, we're going to use HTTPS, which will require a certificate. I'm going to use this command on the screen here to generate a new self-signed certificate. You can upload your own if you have an existing certificate that you'd like to use. After running this command, it will return the thumbprint for our certificate. I'll go ahead and keep that and note it down for later. Once we have that certificate, we can go back to the console. For Ivanti Automation, go to Setup, Global Settings, and locate the Dispatcher Web API. Double-click to open. We'll mark it as enabled. Leave the default setting for SSL. Next, we'll need to enter our thumbprint and select where that's stored. I've stored this in the personal or the My Certificates. This is using the local machine certificates. If you've added a certificate manually, you can open the certificate manager for the local machine and locate your certificate. In this case, mine's under personal. It's going to be this top one. If I double click it, I can go to the Details tab, scroll down, and see the thumbprint there. We can copy this using Control-C. And once you have the thumbprint and where it's stored, just add those settings to the Web API global setting. Click OK. Next, we'll go ahead and add a login for Ivanti Neurons for Service Management to reach out and log into the Ivanti Automation console. To do this, we'll exit Setup Mode, go to Administration, and to Security, and we'll create a new user here. I'll label mine ITSM Service Account and provide a password. If you're not currently using logins, I would recommend that you create an account for yourself first. Save that, close the console, reopen, log in, then create this account. Next, we'll switch to the administrative roles, select Add, then select Full Control, then click OK. We can click OK again to close this user out. Now that the Web API has been enabled and we've created a login, we need to open the Web API port on the local firewall. To do this, we will open PowerShell and run the new net firewall rule command. If you are using Neurons for service management in the cloud, you will also need to enable an external firewall rule on your firewall. This will allow communication between Ivanti Automation and Neurons for Service Management Cloud. Next, we can switch back to Neurons for Service Management and open the Ivanti Automation Configuration workspace. From this workspace, we can provide the URL to access our automation server and the username or password for the login that we've just created. Then we can click Save. Our next step will be to configure a runbook in Ivanti Automation that we can import into Neurons for Service Management and call from our request offering. Let's navigate to the Ivanti Automation console, then to Library, then to Modules. We're going to create a new module for Neurons for Service Management. This will facilitate all of the API calls back to Service Manager. We'll go into Tasks, right click, let's add. You'll see that we have Ivanti Service Manager. It's also down here under Service Desk Integration. Just click on Update Record. We've got 4 different fields here. We're just going to populate those with new parameters. So right click, Input Parameters, Add Parameter. Let's use the same name. And for each of these, we're going to do something a little different. For P_status, we don't need this when we're scheduling. This is used just to track the status of the job and will ultimately be returned to Service Manager. Let's go ahead and click OK. We'll insert a new parameter. We'll keep the name the same. This one we do want to have it scheduled or available when scheduling. We just don't need to show the previous value. Click OK. Job status or job results. We'll do the same thing. We don't need this when scheduling either, so we'll click OK. And same thing for results. We'll store those in a parameter and we'll just call them results. And we also don't need that when scheduling. Okay. That's it for this task and for the module. Now we'll go ahead and create a runbook. Click New Runbook. I'll call this NSM Create AD User. Let's add a job. And for the what, we'll click this little icon to the right. This will be our Create AD User module. Click OK. For the who, we'll click the icon to the right. We'll select, or we'll just run a search. We'll select the one we want it to run on. If you select a team, you'll want to run, or you may want to choose to have it run only on one of the specified agents. Then we're going to come down here at the bottom and say continue runbook on error. If we move over here, we can see the on the resulting tasks, we can see how that looks. And resulting agents will show us where it's running as well. Now let's create another job here. For the what, this time we'll select our Neurons for Service Management module. We'll click OK. We'll select that same agent or another. This one will leave the runbook on error the same. Let's add a condition here. we'll say right-click, click Add, and then Status of Previously Executed Job. And if it's completed, then we will execute this job and set the parameter. Click Add Parameter. We'll enter p_status. Double check the input. We don't need this for scheduling. Click OK. And we'll set that to completed. If this statement's not true, then we'll still execute this job and we'll set the parameter p_status to failed. We'll click OK. So if there's an issue running create AD user, the conditions applied will still run this job, but we'll set that value of p_status appropriately. Let's go to runbook parameters. We've already created p_status. We'll use auto create to generate the rest of them. First name, full name, last name, and user logon name are all parameters from the create AD user module. If we open them, we can just verify that the input is set to show when scheduling. That's the same for all three of these, or all four of these. Yeah, okay. Then we'll look at ISM transaction ID. This is from the NSM module. Under input, we want this one to show. We don't necessarily need a previous value. We'll click OK. If we look at job results, this one doesn't need to show. Click OK, and results, same thing from NSM. We don't need that to show. Okay, so that part's done. Now we can switch back to NSM. Open the admin UI. Navigate to Integration Tools, Web Service Connections. Scroll down. We're looking for Ivanti Automation Runbooks. We're going to go through this wizard so that we can run the import to import our runbook. Confirm yes to continue without scheduling, and click Publish and Run now. Now that's run. We'll switch back to the Analyst UI. We'll click More. We'll open Request Offerings. And I have an existing offering in here that I'd like to update under General Services called New User Account. We'll go ahead and open this. Go to Plan Request Fulfillment. And this offering out of the box just creates a manual user task and follows a standard request workflow. From the left side here, we'll pull in Ivanti Automation. We'll double click that. We'll provide this a name. You can see here, since we only have one runbook, we imported only one runbook. If you have more, you'll need to select from this dropdown the runbook that you would like to use. We'll set a duration for this before it times out. I'll give it 2 hours. Then I'll fill in some of these fields from our service request. Give our first name, full name, last name, and user login. You can leave ISM transaction ID blank. This will be automatically populated from the web service scripts. Go ahead and select Save. For this flow, I'm going to have it try automation first. If that completes, we'll follow the standard request workflow. If it fails or times out, we'll just resort to our manual tasks. Go ahead and save this. Okay, let's go to a service request. We'll create a new one. Select a customer. I'll just use the heat admin user. Go to General Services. For under our new user account offering, I'll create a new user. Just enter a username, our first name, last name, and this offering will populate a full name and a user login. Go ahead and click Save. This will kick off a workflow. Go ahead and refresh. Wait to see that workflow start. Okay, we can see our new user account request workflow has started. If we go back to the automation console, we can go to Jobs and Scheduling, Activity. We can see it's been running here for about 20 seconds. All right, it's moved on. We can go to job history. We can see this has ran and it says it ran successfully. We can see that transaction ID was populated and all the values from our request offering. If we go back to Neurons for Service Management and refresh, okay, so we can see it's been fulfilled. If we look at the workflow, we can see that that has completed. Let's look at that. There we go. Automation, create user, completed. We followed the standard request workflow, closed it out, and now that's marked as fulfilled. If we submit another one using the same name, this should fail. So let's select a customer. We'll go with the admin, back to General Services, new account, name. There we go, everything the same. Go ahead and save this. And we'll wait a few seconds. Refresh here. Okay, we can see it's still active, but now there's a task here that's been created for the service desk to go ahead and create that. That was how to configure Ivanti automation to work with Neurons for service management in our request offering workflows.